What's up, dudes and girls? We're here today building the Quadzillas. So we got Michaela here, and she's been having a goal for a while now to build her quads. And that is a pretty common goal. They are hard to build. They're big muscle. There's 4 muscles all in the quadriceps, hence the name quadriceps. So in this video, we want to go over what muscles, where they are, the function, and certain exercises you can do to help pinpoint those muscles and build them. Yeah. If you want hundreds of exercise tutorials available to you at your fingertips, check out our Buff Fitness app, available on iOS and Android. All right, let's go over the muscles of the quadriceps first. As you can tell, Michaela's ready. She got the shorty shorts on, boom, she's flexing them. Now, there's 4 muscles in the quadriceps, and we're gonna go over the vastus lateralis first. So it's named that because obviously it's on the lateral side of the body. So it's kind of easy to remember. The vastus lateralis located right here, and it's gonna come down right into the patella, the knee right there, and connect up on kind of near the greater trochanter on your femur here. So it's not crossing over the hip joint, it's really connecting on the femur, coming down, but it is coming below the knee there. So that is going to be the first muscle we're going over, the vastus lateralis. Now moving inward, it's going to be the rectus femoris. So there are 2 snake-like muscles that come into the patella as well, that knee joint right in here. And the rectus femoris muscles actually come all the way up and cross over the hip joint there. We'll talk more about that later. So the next one is going to be the vastus medialis. So it's closer to the middle part of the body. That's why it's called the medialis. That's kind of coming on the inside here. So those 2, the vastus lateralis and medialis, kind of make up the teardrops that you always hear about, those big kind of quad teardrops. Boom, there you go. Yeah, you gotta flex them, that's awesome. Okay, now there's one more, and it's underlying all those muscles. It's the vastus intermedialis. So you can't see it, it's all the way underneath, and it's located on the femur as well. So now that you know the names of the muscles and where they are, why is that important? One of the main things that you want to understand when learning about the muscles, the anatomy, the locations, insertions, and origins is what they do, the function behind them. And the main function of the quadriceps is going to be knee extension. So if you're in a flex position here, just like that, it's going to extend the knee, boom, extending. So that's why one of the main exercises, very well-known exercise that you can perform to isolate the quadriceps is going to be the knee extensions or leg extension machine that you see almost in every commercial gym. Now, we were talking about the rectus femoris, how it crosses over the hip joint. And because it crosses over the hip joint here, it is going to be a hip flexor as well. So, yep, just like that, bringing your leg up, flexing at the hip because it crosses over. So it's shortening and it's pulling that femur upwards, just like so. So there is many different ways that you can work the different muscles. Obviously, knee extension, it's going to hit most of the quads there, boom, primarily that, but also the hip flexion, boom, rectus femoris. Now you're targeting and stimulating the rectus femoris. So there are different ways to hit those quads. Now, do you want to just do leg extensions for eternity to build your quads? You could, definitely, because obviously their main function is going to be that knee extension in there, but there are a lot of different exercises that you should perform and can perform to help stimulate the quads, especially because you can perform these exercises with a lot of weight. And those exercises are going to be compound movements like squats. So we want to go over some of the variations of squats that you can perform to really hit those quads right. So we are at the squat rack now and about to perform some squats, but I do want to talk about some of the differences in anatomy. Michaela, she's tall. She's 6 feet tall, and she has long femurs. You can tell her legs are long. I mean, they're like longer than mine. But the femur length is really going to dictate how you're going to perform a squat. The difference being if you have a shorter femur length, either you are shorter in stature or maybe you're just anatomy, you have a shorter femur. With a shorter femur, it's going to allow you to have more of an upright torso getting into a deep squat. With a longer femur, you're going to have to bend over and really hinge that hip to get that deep squat. So the 2 differences are an upright torso is going to be less of hinging in the hips less activation in your glutes and hamstrings and more in your quads, where if you have to really hinge in those hips, bow forward, push those hips back, it's gonna be more stretch, more activation in those hamstrings and glutes. So knowing that, an upright torso in a squat is gonna help stimulate your quads a bit more. But with a longer femur, it's gonna be hard to get in that position. So what do you do to be able to help stimulate those quads and still perform a squat with more of an upright torso? Now there's a lot of different variations. One is going to be the typical back squat, but you're gonna elevate your heels. So we have these kind of nice handy wedges here. You can also just use plates, you know, whatever you have in the gym to help elevate your feet. So I'm just gonna place them here. Michaela is gonna unrack the bar. She's got it supported on her back. Is that the right positioning? Does that feel good? Okay. So now with her heels elevated, she'll be able to have more of an upright torso as she squats down. Boom, just like so. Where before, if she was just feet flat on the ground, she would really have to push her hips back to get in that same depth and same positioning of a squat. Glutes are firing up, hamstrings are firing up. All of a sudden, elevate those heels, her torso is able to be more upright, and there's less hinging in the hip and more focus on that knee flexion and extension, and therefore targeting and stimulating the quads a bit more over just a typical squat without elevating the heels. So very easy variation of a squat, just elevate the heels. Now, let's say you perform this and you're like, I'm still not quite feeling it in those quads. Well, another variation and a very easy fix is doing a front-loaded squat or a front squat. Now with the weight distributed in the front half of you, the anterior side of your body, that weight distribution is now gonna put more emphasis on those quads. So if you get in that same positioning, especially with heels elevated, so it's kind of like 2-for-1 deal. Not only are your heels elevated, but you're also doing a front-loaded squat. You're really gonna target those quads like crazy and also have even more of an upright torso. So I'm gonna have Michaela get in a position, boom, just look at that. Her torso is almost straight up and down. So a little less emphasis on the glutes and hamstrings and a lot of emphasis on the quads there. Really fire those up, just like that. Perfect. Good job, Michaela. So that is an easy way to really focus and build those quads. I mean, your quads are already pumped, I can tell. Blood's flowing in them, they're activated, they're stimulated. And that is kind of the hard part when performing a compound exercise like squats, is it is not going to isolate the quads alone. The glutes are still gonna be working, the hamstrings, still gonna be a lot of balancing, bracing, core activation, upper body all tensing. But the good thing about a compound movement like this, like the squats, is going to be, you're gonna be able to do a lot more weight and put a lot of load on those muscles, more so than let's say an isolation movement like the leg extensions. Leg extensions, amazing, but it's good to mix it up and also perform movements like the squat, so that way you can get a little bit more bang for your buck and put a lot of weight on those quads. And more weight typically means bigger muscles. So that's one of the reasons why you'd want to perform a compound movement. There is also another variation of a squat that we do want to go over, and that's going to be the goblet squats. So we're set up here, and if you're not familiar with the exercise, the goblet squat, it's pretty simple. You just have a kettlebell or a dumbbell, and we're also going to elevate Michaela's heels here to really get that upright torso. And essentially it's very similar to a front-loaded squat, but as you can tell, she is holding the weight now with her hands here, and she has her feet very close together. And as you can tell, as she performs this, similar to all the other squats, specifically like the front-loaded squat, her torso is gonna be very upright. Now, one thing you can do in this exercise is not go to full extension and really just come up, stop before full extension and go right back down. Now, as you can tell, yes, there's still flexion and extension in her hips, but there's a lot of emphasis and movement right in that knee joint with the flexion and extension. Boom, those quads are firing up, they're burning, and I can tell because she stopped. Because you can't do that for too long, because that's that time under tension, those quads are controlling it. they're burning, they're firing up. And a very simple way to do the compound movement, but let's say you're not comfortable with the front-loaded squat with the barbell or the rear-loaded, you can always do something like this, which is the goblet squat. So another exercise we want to talk about really quickly is going to be the Bulgarian split squat. Definitely a favorite nowadays, a very popular exercise, and for good reason. And I do want to talk about some of the functions and the reason why it's so good for the quads. So I'm going to have Michaela get in position, and one thing you'll notice right away is going to be a unilateral exercise, meaning that it's going to be one leg at a time, which is very beneficial because obviously when you're working bilateral exercises all the time, there can be some asymmetrical problems that end up showing up, or one side maybe develops a little bit more than the other due to one side being dominant. So doing a unilateral exercise can be very beneficial for targeting some of those deficiencies in one side and being able to key in on that and work on that. And as you can tell, when you do this exercise yourself, you'll notice that one side might feel a little off balance, might feel a little bit weaker. So right away, that tells you that you might need to concentrate on that side a little bit more to bring it up to par with the other side. So the reason why this is so good is not only unilateral, but also because it is a compound using the hip joint, the knee joint, but there are some positioning that you should keep in mind in this exercise is one, you'll notice Michaela's foot is not too far out. As she squats down, her knee is in fact going over her toe. But the key point here is she's keeping her feet, or her foot in this case, flat on the ground. Heel is not bringing up, she's not losing balance, kind of putting the pressure on different areas of her foot. It's stable, it's flat. So that, because of her knee being over her toe, it is going to be activating her quads quite a bit more than if she kicked her leg out farther away, which is gonna be put extra stretch into her hamstring and slightly take away some of the emphasis in the quads. So an awesome exercise that you can perform that is gonna help definitely activate those quads. But again, since it's a compound, it's still working your glutes, still working your hamstrings a little bit. They're there to help stabilize balance and also contract concentrically and eccentrically. But you just have to pay attention to the positioning sometimes. And because of the positioning, either your feet, your heels being elevated, your legs being closer together, your torso being upright, all those slight position changes can put more emphasis on different areas of the body, on different muscles. In this case, the quads. Looking good. Hell yeah. Nice. Good job. So there we go. So a quick rundown of the anatomy of the quads, the function, and some of the exercises that you can do to help develop those quadzillas. And just remember, it's going to take time. I mean, Michaela's been developing her quads for a long time now.
I don't feel that they're the biggest.
She doesn't feel that they're the biggest.
There is a big difference when I look back from 10 years ago, so I'm really happy about that.
I've seen those pictures. I mean, she definitely looked more like a beanpole, her legs. And
Yep.
now you look like a complete athlete, a true buff girl. Those legs are popping. Good job. She's keeping it up. And you can use these same kind of exercises and knowledge to help develop your quads too. So thanks for joining us for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And until next time, stay buff.